Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Joe, I want to go to you. We've got, there's quite a strong legal team, but of course, one needs to separate, of course, the strength of who they are from a personal perspective, and that, of course, with regards to the facts that they're going to have to bring to the table. Now, the strength is there of this legal team, but how important will those facts be in making a compelling case for the people of Palestine?
Thanks, Faraz. Great question. So I think our legal team, and I echo Roshan's point there, has put together really one of the most remarkable texts. It leans on a variety of sources, both from international human rights organizations, Palestinian groups, and reads these very carefully in a way that the Israeli establishment and its allies in the global West are trying to delegitimate, reads these very carefully against the threshold conditions of the Genocide Convention. So the facts are, as you mentioned in the beginning of the show, we are looking at the mass killings, we are looking at the bombing of hospitals, schools, etc. And really importantly, because this is an issue that does come up in attempts to discredit the case. And we know, for example, that the the Israeli government has sent out communications to all its embassies, urging them to discredit the case. So there's a huge push of propaganda and hasbara and misinformation around this. And one of these has to do with genocidal intent. And the South African case has made an extraordinarily strong submission on the issue of intent. So the facts are there. The facts we know, any thinking, watching, living, breathing person is aware of what the facts are. But they have also shown the use of genocidal rhetoric, the intention to dehumanize and to call for the total annihilation of Palestinians alongside the dispossession and occupation of land. So I think our team has done a remarkable job in both bringing together the kind of empirical facts on the ground in terms of how the Israeli government has just been carrying out an unthinkable genocidal onslaught on the people of Gaza, and also to put this to show how this is not just mass killings, but mass killings with an explicit genocidal intent, which is to destroy in whole or in part an ethnic or racial group. And I would add to this, and one of the things that I think is quite profound is that this is placed in the submission, while it is dealing with the situation in Gaza, in the context of a 75-year-long apartheid regime of settler colonialism. So I think on every level, our South African legal team has put together a truly remarkable text, and it, if nothing else, is a recording and archiving of these devastating horrors.
Roshan, I want to come to you, and of course, from a personal perspective, you're somebody who, of course, went into exile during apartheid as a struggle stalwart, as an activist, and of course, you returned at the dawn of democracy. And South Africa has been seen as that shining light of fighting apartheid, fighting colonialism, fighting oppressive governments. The role played by South Africa, because South Africa has stood up and raised its hand with regards to being against the oppression by the Israeli government. And why is it that I think us as a country have taken this initiative to turn the tide? What makes South Africa so unique in really raising its hand and saying, enough is enough, it's time for us to act, and the act starts now?
Exactly as you've been saying, because we ourselves fought apartheid, we ourselves know how we lobbied the international community, we lobbied in the United Nations until we achieved sanctions and an arms embargo, and in our case, an oil embargo. And we know that it takes putting pressure on governments by ordinary people. And I think we've seen that happening. And I think that as we follow what takes place, particularly tomorrow when South Africa gives its hearing, we need to also at the same time be ready to up our game as civil society. We need to keep up the pressure because logically following this, even though the case may drag on, hopefully we will win the provisional measures. Whether or not Israel complies, then we have to keep up the pressure. We have to put pressure on them. If they are not going to comply, we need to put pressure for sanctions. We need to call on the international community to sanction Israel. If they do comply, even so, that's just the very first step. We still need to increase our BDS campaigns, increase all our campaigns in South Africa and globally. In South Africa, of course, in support of our government, and globally to get their governments to support the South African case, to get their governments to say, yes, we support the fact that South Africa has taken a case. Israel, we believe, is committing the most grievous, in fact, of the crimes under international law, the crime of genocide. And as Joe has said, if you look at the document that's been filed by South Africa, it's detailed, it's thorough, it's referenced, and it's clear. The arguments are very clear. Most of the international legal fraternity also have been saying so. They have been confident that the argument put meets all the criteria within the convention. The intent is a big issue that has been more difficult in other cases to prove. But in this case, where you have the Prime Minister saying the whole population is responsible, where you have the Defense Minister saying, calling the Palestinians human animals and to be dealt with accordingly. I think the issue of intent to commit the crime of genocide as defined in the convention is very clear. And we need to keep up the pressure across the world, across Africa. We need more countries to come on board to say they are supporting the case of South Africa. Already just yesterday, I think there were more countries that have issued statements of support: Nicaragua, Bangladesh, Pakistan, the Maldives, Venezuela, and the day before Bolivia. Before that was the OIC, Turkey, Jordan, and Malaysia. And I think more and more countries are going to do so. More and more countries want to be on the right side of history. And I think we should be very proud that our struggle continues through the struggle of the Palestinian people, that we're challenging apartheid yet again, and we're not going to rest as South Africa until we can really say we have defeated apartheid. Because another important point about this submission is it doesn't start on the 7th of October. It sets a context in which the actions of Israel have been taking place from 1947, from the Nakba, from, as Joe has said, at the same time, the same year that apartheid came into being in South Africa, the apartheid state of Israel with the apartheid laws of segregation and then later the fragmentation and so on came about. So I think it gives a thorough context in which the current claim of genocide is being made. And as South Africa, we should be proud that our struggle is continuing, that we are continuing that, and that we will not let another country suffer. Of course, it's been said many times that it's worse than apartheid here, what is taking place under normal, before 7th of October, so-called normal times in Palestine. But it is apartheid, it is settler colonialism, and this case is really a challenge that hasn't been seen before, as you opened by saying, to the West, to the colonialists, to the settler colonialist regimes.
Joe, before we go to the break, there's something important that Roshan mentioned, and that was, of course, of course, pointing out that it is South African lawyers, and of course, the pride as us as South Africans feel that they're representing us, but not just us, the people of Palestine, on this important stage. But there are other nations that are joining, and the list of the legal fraternity extends beyond our borders. I mean, that is special, isn't it? And that just proves that this is truly a global campaign to try and bring Israel to account.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And just, I must say, just before I came on, one of the things that we've been doing with the anti-apartheid movement here and the BDS coalition is we have convened a group of international lawyers and scholars of international law from all over the world. And just this morning, and I'm happy to share it with your viewers, we put out a letter asking for signature, a statement in support by scholars of international law and international relations. And I, just before I came on, I checked the numbers. I think within the first hour, we had over 100 signatures. It's just snowballing. And there was, for example, on the, already, on the, early October or mid-October, 800 genocide scholars came out in support. And now so many are coming out in support of this in across international law spaces, global justice spaces. And I think there's a recognition, and I think this connects to what Roshan was saying, that apartheid is both a local derogation and a local evil thing, but also apartheid is global and apartheids are connected. So people know, for example, that the Israeli government was one of the biggest funders and armors of the South African apartheid government. So these struggles are connected, our struggles against genocide, against apartheid, against colonial oppression, settler colonialism, racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, etc., they are all connected. And I think there's a big recognition of this from the international legal world, certainly, and international law itself is very often seen as, and is very often, a very colonial architecture. But within the space, there are those who are fighting for justice, and they have come out so strong in support of this case.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Joe Bloon and Roshan Dadu. Do stay tuned to Hilaal Live.